Actually, it was funny, dude. I did a lesson this week about stereotypes of the United States. Well, really, it was just the United States in general.
Did
And
you say this for the podcast?
yeah, I can save it for the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay,
That's a good
save
idea.
it.
That's a
Because
good
I
idea.
feel like I'm about to laugh at some of these stereotypes, and I wanna talk about that.
Sounds good. Hello and welcome to the Untranslatable Podcast. Today we are recording episode number 62. We're very excited to be here, and today we will be talking about independent language study versus taking a language class or a language course. So we're hoping to give you guys some insight on some advantages and disadvantages of both of these types of methods to learn a language. Like everything in life, there's always going to be some pros and cons, so we're looking forward to it. Hopefully, we can also give you a few tips to help you, regardless if you are an independent language learner or someone who is thinking about enrolling in a language course somewhere. So we're really looking forward to it. I'm very curious to hear my co-host insights. My buddy Jared, what's been going on, Jared?
Hello. I'm filled with insights, filled to the brim with insights. But before we get to those insights, you know, that's a teaser for everyone. That's a teaser, like, ooh, insights from this idiot. Well, this idiot also has a Twitter, and follow it. Untranslatable one, the number one. Our Instagram is Untranslatable Podcast, which is, I always brag about our Instagram, but it could only go to the next level. And it has, now that our clips are actual videos of moving real life people.
That's right.
And
we're not a simulation, everybody. We are real.
And you could also email us, untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us about your stories, your traveling stories. Give us some untranslatables. Weird sayings that your parents say to you that don't really make any sense, but you know what they mean. Or just other idioms you've come across from some of your friends that are not from wherever it is you're from. Who knows? Maybe they are from where you're from. Or you could spread a little love and give us 5-star reviews, too. That would be great.
Absolutely.
On iTunes and Stitcher. Hey, I have a question.
Hopefully I have an answer.
How's it been going with your I feel like I need to remind myself to check in on the teaching. When do you get new students? First of all, has that happened?
It's coming up. It's right around the corner.
Oh, man.
I will be.
I'm itching.
I know.
For that.
I'm excited. I'm excited to meet them because most of the students I've taught maybe 1 or 2 lessons here or there. So I have a kind of a slight idea of who they are. But overall, I don't really know where their skill levels are at and truly who they are yet. So I'm looking forward to that. And I will be meeting them after next week. So I believe it will be like the 2nd or 3rd of February will be the first day of the second semester here in the Czech Republic. And then I will be teaching the first year and second year students. So for our American listeners out there, this would be the freshmen and sophomores. So that should be interesting and fun. And I will be teaching a couple of my, or at least I think one of my 4th year classes. They're such a pleasure to teach that we were able to make it work with my schedule to continue teaching them as well.
Nice. How nice of you. You just gotta spread a little love, spread a little English.
That's right. That's right.
Do you have to give final exams?
Thankfully, I do not. So I've been very lucky that the only really assessment that I do is prognosis of how the students are doing in the class.
Like a doctor.
Kind of. That's
I've
right.
analyzed their English for
Dr.
months.
Chad, the language doctor here. That's right. Yeah, so it's really great that I don't usually give a lot of homework because I figure if we do a lot of work in class, what's the point of? And plus, since I'm their speaking and listening teacher, there's not really much. I mean, I could say learn this vocabulary or do that, but a lot of these students already speak pretty good English.
Right.
And at the same time as well, especially the fourth year students, they have the big exit exam here, which is called the Maturita, which will be coming up in a few months. So let's be honest, they have higher priorities right now than Chad's English homework. So there you go.
Does it kind of feel like, we're talking about your, these new students you're getting. I don't want to neglect your old tried and true students. Does it almost feel like the time you spend with them is not that it's not enough, because you don't make that decision, but it's like, oh, I'm just getting to know these people. It's like, all right, bye-bye.
Oh, 100%. I think that's usually the case with
I guess you
anyone
do a lot of
who, right. Yeah. I mean, that's been the story of my life now for the last, honestly, man, it feels like the last 8 years. Even undergrad, I mean, I was happy to graduate, but it went by really fast, and graduate school was the same way.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And so it went from being at Albion to East Lansing, now the Czech Republic, and who knows where we'll be next. So, yeah, and that's right. A little teaser for all of our listeners out there. But yeah, so it's been great getting to know them, and that is the sad part about it. And the other sad thing is I only teach them one lesson a week. So it's been a lot more gradual in terms of getting to know them. I think usually in the Czech Republic, teachers will teach 2 lessons a week of English to, each class. And so for me, I only get 1. So it took me a while to learn their names. And plus, there are so many students to keep track of. Most of my classes have anywhere from 10 to 15. And I teach, I think 12 or 13 different classes. So, I mean, if you do the math, we'll just make it an easy number and say each class has 10 students. That's over 140 students' names I have to memorize.
Do you develop an emotional attachment to your classes where you're like, oh,
of
man,
course. Of
I
course.
gotta say goodbye. It's always like a sad moment. I feel
today...
God. It's like getting a dog and knowing that it's going to die before you do.
Yeah, true. That's very true. That's why you have to get
way
like
less depressing.
a pet tortoise or something that'll outlive you, baby.
Like a bird or something.
Right, exactly. No, actually, it's funny you mentioned that though, Jared. Today and yesterday were my last days with a couple of my classes, because next week I will actually be in Humpolec in the Czech Republic for a meeting with my organization. So
like a debriefing?
I won't be at school. So it was a little sad. And a lot of them I saw the look on their faces of either sadness or what have you. Smallest violin in the world.
Onions in here?
Right? Exactly. I'm not going to lie, man. I am a little worried when the end of the year comes. I mean, you know me. I'm a fairly emotional guy. I'm worried I'm not going to be able to keep it together when it's time to really say goodbye.
Has that happened before? Have you broke down in front of a class?
Never. No. I've never broke down in front of a class. But
I would pay to see that, though.
When I left Austria, I know you would. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, when I left Austria, though. Yeah, that would be you. Or you'd be going like this, world's smallest violin, like, oh, so sad. Or maybe the one tear coming down, something like that. But no, when I left Austria, I remember looking around my room at my apartment, and it was empty because I had moved all my stuff. I stayed there a couple extra weeks with my parents, and I gave my keys to Tomas. And I looked out the window, man, remembering the first day we got to Vienna, looking out the window at Lipatzgasse. And feeling this utter sense of like, how is this possible? It feels like day one, it felt like yesterday looking out that window and feeling a little bit excited, really, to be honest, kind of scared because I had no idea what was going to happen within the next year. And then looking out that window thinking this is the last time I'll maybe be in this room ever. And that's the truth because I don't think IES owns the building anymore.
Okay. Do they like switch that around often, like places
probably.
that they own?
I would imagine so, but I'm the wrong person to ask that.
Right.
But yeah, so we'll see if I can hold it together during the end of the year. So far, it's been okay with, saying goodbye to these classes because I know I'll still see them around. It's not like I
Right.
won't see them for a while. So we'll see. But speaking of teaching in classes, man, I've had some interesting discussions this week. So I had to figure out, okay, what would be a meaningful last lesson for my third-year students? And I thought, you know what? Let's talk about the United States because we haven't talked about it really yet in my class with the third graders. And so we did a little bit of geography and talked about stereotypes, which was really interesting.
Slipping on gator piss.
What do you think? What do you think some stereotypes are that my students mentioned?
Were they like? Are we talking racial?
I'm talking all over the place stereotypes.
Why are you gonna put this on me now?
Because it makes it more interesting. I've already been talking too much.
For your,
well, no, just tell me what stereotypes you think they mentioned, and I'll tell you whether or not they did. No pressure.
Well, I'll make it easy on myself.
Okay.
I'll just do black. I'll think of black people to start with.
I mean, some students did write black people on the board. Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll start with a safe one, something that I can identify with. That they are criminals.
No. So I told the students.
See, now I already feel like an asshole.
Right. No. See, well, I told the students write stereotypes about America. Like when you think of America, what do you think of in terms of stereotypes?
Generally. I thought you meant of people within America. Okay.
No.
Some other stereotypes I was going to have for black people is better rhythm, trendsetters, great style, and very friendly.
I mean, I feel like those are all really positive stereotypes, though.
I did have other ones to say. It just felt like it would be weird if I left it at they're all criminals, and then just we move on.
Right. That's fair.
No. Anyway, stereotypes about Americans. Greedy.
I didn't get that one. Nope.
Okay. Off to a great start once again. Loud.
Nope. Although I think when you and I think of American stereotypes, that definitely comes to mind.
Friendly?
Friendly was one of them. Very good.
Okay.
I also have to admit, I asked my students, have they met American people? And most of them, I've been the first American they've ever met. Which I feel like is kind of a gift and a curse because I think in some ways I'm a normal American, whatever that means. But I think in a lot of other ways, I'm not your normal American. Like, talk that calf out of that heifer. Exactly. So what do you think are some other stereotypes they mentioned, Jared?
Did they say racist?
They did not.
Okay.
Although I have talked about that with some of my classes.
Because if they did, I would say that's not an unfair stereotype, but that's not an American-specific thing.
I would agree with that.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. It's harder for me to think so broadly about America because, when I think so more specifically about different groups, what do you think about...
Right.
Do they think that we're all rich?
Believe it or not, no. I was curious to see if they would write that. But I mean, put yourself in the shoes of
check out this
of a Czech, a 16, 17, 18-year-old Czech student. Put yourself in their shoes. Like, what do you think they hear about? What do you think they know about in terms of the United States?
Probably a lot of the media. I feel like a lot of the stereotypes might have to do with different culture around media. So whether it's famous actors or musicians or...
See, I think you're still going a lot deeper than my students went.
Man.
I'm talking like really surface level stereotypes and things foreigners would associate with America.
I can't help that I'm deeper thinkers than your students, okay? Look.
You're also older and you're also American, so I think it puts you in an advantage on a couple levels.
Just give me some examples. Give me an example
All right.
and maybe I'll pick
people.
up on it. Okay, fat people. Oh, it's like stuff like we eat a lot of food, big portions.
A lot of fast food.
A lot of fast food.
And a lot of my students, we were talking about different fast food restaurants, and we had an interesting discussion about White Castle because a lot of them have seen Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. Mm-hmm. So that was
What do they think about
talk.
White Castle? I've only really eaten there once, and it was like I was in like early middle school or something like that.
I mean, they don't really. They
Maybe
don't really know much
some
about
more
it.
weed or something, you know.
I mean, they don't really know much because it's just from the movie, right? And so
Right.
they asked me about it. They were like, is the food good? And I'm like, well, your body's going to regret it the next day. But otherwise, I would say in terms of taste, I think White Castle isn't too bad. But it doesn't look very appetizing.
Doesn't
It's
have
really,
a good
really
reputation.
cheap. That's true. I would say I really wonder how much revenue White Castle made after that movie came out.
I mean, it definitely helped. It definitely really gave it a boost. I'm sure they're like, this movie's ridiculous, and it's not really the best look. But I mean, we've got a lot of friendly stoners now showing up.
Right,
That's good.
right.
Neil Patrick Harris is here.
Exactly.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I would say this though about what's the place called? White Castle. I think. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. I think the reputation has gotten better over time. And I think it used to be, like, at least to me, the reputation was always like it was the lowest of the low. But I think over time, it's in my head, it's sort of reached parity with like McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King. Now to me, all those places are the same. And it's like, how is White Castle any worse than those places? It's all just perception.
Interesting. I would definitely say it's worse. But
Okay, well,
I
I've
couldn't
also,
really tell you why.
Once again,
but-
I've only I never go there, so
Right.
I don't actually know.
Right. So yeah, so some other stereotypes. So fat people, fast food.
By the way, I think that fat people stereotype is starting to not go away, but I don't think that's starting to be as true as it used to be. I think it's still true, but I think we might need to slowly retire that one.
Right. Well, I explain to my students, I feel like the United States is a lot of extremes on both sides. Right? We have these really, really obese people, but then we also have these fitness nuts who are like super jacked, in great shape. So yeah, it's hard to say, and I think a lot of people are very athletic in the United States. People, depending on where you are, I think you could find a lot of people who are in fairly good shape.
Right. Like I've been to Los Angeles, and I mean, I've never felt uglier in my life. I mean, you know, I knew I was ugly, but I didn't need to be reminded at every corner that every person I looked at, it's like, oh right. There's a lot of improvement that could be done on this form.
So basically, what I'm hearing from you is, if I go to LA ever in my life, I need to make sure I'm feeling really confident when I go.
I think you'll do just fine. You're
Appreciate it.
Just bring your guitar everywhere with you, like you're Jack Johnson or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if he does that or not. I feel like he does. Wear sandals a lot.
Oh God, I hate sandals.
I do too. I don't really like shorts either, to be honest with you. I'm starting to lose
really
interest in
either.
shorts.
Interesting. Anyway, some other stereotypes. They mentioned like cars and muscle cars and Americans driving everywhere, which unless you live in a big city, I would say that's fairly true, like at least driving most places.
Yeah,
Because
but
things are so spread apart.
I would ask those people. I agree with them, but if any of those people in there that were talking about muscle cars and stuff were legitimate car nerds, they would admit that they love giant V8s as well. That's like a staple of the
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we're known for that, but is that? I guess the stereotype doesn't have to be negative. Why am I getting so defensive?
Yeah, I'm not sure why you are. These are just things I ask my students, and they told
Right.
me this is what they associate with the United States. A lot of them also wrote like Hollywood or famous movies.
Right. I did mention that one. You know what's interesting though? I think that kind of shows like my American ignorance right there is that I kind of just like expect when I first started rambling off stuff about way more specific stuff. Me as an American, you just expect that people not from America know so much more about your culture than they have any reason to know about.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I would also like to think both of us are thinkers on the podcast. And I mean, the goal of this activity was just to start to get the students to, get the wheels turning, trying to get them to start thinking. The goal of that activity wasn't to, let's do a deep analysis of American culture and have this philosophical discussion about all the complexities of
Right.
race and religion and all these things. Because, I could definitely do a lesson about that, but it would take a lot of preparation, a lot of just extra research on my end.
I mean, that's a hard lesson to put at the end because I feel like with a lesson like that, you might need a follow-up. Like there's just a
for
chance you
For
might
sure.
need a follow-up.
Right, and I wanted this lesson to be light and fun and interesting for the students.
Right.
So what was also fun, though, was I talked about stereotypes about the different regions of the United States. So, we have the West, we have the Southwest, the Southeast, the Northeast, and the Midwest. Obviously, it was hard for me to be very neutral because, I do love the Midwest, and I am a Midwesterner. But,
You
correct
betcha.
me if I'm wrong, Jared, but I feel like people in the Midwest, and I think Don even mentioned this in our previous episode. Also, shout out to Don. He was a fantastic guest. It was great to have him on. But I feel like Midwesterners have a different level of friendliness. Would you agree with that or no?
Yes, I mean, I'd agree, but I also say it's comparable to what you'd find in the South. So I would
Okay.
say it's not exclusive to. I think it's just those areas that like are just it's sort of those less. I don't want to say less populated because I don't know what it is about it, but there is something about. I think there is something about
It's the
the
smaller
South.
town vibe, right?
I guess so. I guess, but like I think people would say that about Chicago as well.
Really? I don't find people that friendly in Chicago.
Yeah, but that's because you're from a small community in Michigan.
That's true.
But maybe someone from New York or Los Angeles or something like that would. Who knows?
That's true.
I don't know.
That's true. It's all about your perspective. That's true.
I feel like I've heard, at least from my listening to podcasts of people from those fast-talking, big moving towns, that they seem to think that Chicago is, it's obviously, it's obvious. It's not like you're going to, Dexter or something like that. But it does seem that they might have a more of a, and maybe if it's not nicer, it's just more of like that sort of opening, like friendly sort of, you betcha attitude when you go to a grocery store or something like
Right.
that.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. I use the example of, where I'm from in Michigan, it's not that strange to be in line in the grocery store and someone to just randomly start chatting you up for whatever reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God.
And you should have seen the look of sheer horror on my students' faces because they were like, what? Like you go to the grocery store or you're waiting for your bus or whatever, and people will just come up and talk to you because
Yeah.
here in the Czech Republic, that's not. I feel like people here in the Czech Republic are willing to be social when it's a social event. But if people are like shopping or on the bus or doing their own thing, they're like,
Right.
why are you talking to me right now?
Yeah, we have these set places to do this, and it's called parties. And if I happen to see you at one, then we'll do this.
Right, exactly.
And if
Exactly.
not, then,
But yeah,
then just
but it was
please.
it was a fun lesson, and I also always try to tell my students, look, write whatever you want on the board. You're not going to offend me at this point. Like I've heard
Right.
all the offensive stereotypes about Americans.
I mean, there was a kid that said the N-word in your class a couple months ago. Hey, I
Right.
didn't forget that, by the way.
Right. Yeah. Actually,
we never forget. Remember that.
Actually,
That's
Jared,
a tip
I have
for
a question
everyone.
for
We never
you.
forget.
I have a question for you, and I don't know how to go about this, but I saw a student of mine on Facebook. His status was, if an Academy Award-winning movie can say the N-word, why can't I? And I was gonna comment on it, but I was like, you know what? I don't really want to get into a Facebook argument with you. Although part of me kind of wishes I would have said something. What do you think? Should I have said something? Should I have left it? What do you think?
Wait, this is your student?
This is one of my students, yeah.
I would leave it alone. But because you shouldn't be getting into Facebook arguments with your students.
Right.
It's not a good look.
But at the same time, I feel like that's also a good teachable moment to be like, look, man, like
Yeah, but
there are a lot of reasons why you shouldn't be saying
you're
it.
off the clock, though. You're off the clock. And I feel like there has to be a separation between
That's
like
true. Good
personal
point.
and professional. And it just doesn't I mean, even if you, I mean, maybe there's no harm in just like writing one comment, writing your like a paragraph and leaving your bit, but don't. I just, as soon as it turns into a back and forth, there's nothing good's gonna come of it. Even if it's not like
Right.
arguments that's happening.
Right.
So what I would say is, first of all, you live in the Czech Republic. You can say whatever you want. And who's going to stop you? And I think there's something to the fact that just recognize that whenever you say it, there's a reaction from there's either a reaction or not from someone. So what I always want to say is no one is stopping anyone from saying it. You're welcome to say whatever you want.
Right.
But you have to accept the consequences that come with it. And for whatever reason, I mean, I know what the reasons are, but for whatever reason, there is a connotation that causes people to react whenever you hear that. No one reacts when someone says cracker because no one gives a shit. And and clearly, so people react when you say the quote unquote N-word. Why do we call it the N? You know, it's
right.
So
it
it's like,
has a
first
lot
of all,
power.
Say it. If you think there's nothing wrong with it, say it. And then when people react to it, sound like an idiot and say, "What's wrong with it?" And or listen to people and say and even listen to people if they don't know what they're talking about. If it bothers so many people, then why? What is he? Is it really affecting his rap career that he can't use the N-word? What's
right.
Where is it? Where is that coming into use in his time
exactly.
in the Czech Republic, where he sees like a black person, every 6 years?
Right. Yeah. Just to me, it's also difficult too because it's hard, I think, for a lot of people in the Czech Republic to put their, to walk in the shoes of somebody like me who, if I were back in the States, I mean, I don't say it in general, but I don't say it here. And I wouldn't say it in the States because it's just like you said, like in my opinion, there's going to be consequences. And even if there weren't consequences, for me as a white person, it just doesn't feel right to say it, Right.
And for that student also, just so that student knows, the quote-unquote N-word comes from slavery. It's what they called slaves. And so that's why there's a negative connotation to it to this day when a white person, especially who generally were the slave owners, calls a black person the quote-unquote N-word, which we call the N-word. Did he write N-word in his status?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Wrote the word out.
Well, then he's fine. Well, he said it? What's the problem? What do you mean he can't say it? You just did it.
That's true.
There you go. You did it. You could say it. You can do it, buddy. But just know that people aren't going to like you. And if you're fine with that, then go on with it. And you're probably fine with that because you probably have bitch-ass friends that aren't going to say anything anyway.
That's true. That's a good point. But yeah, anyways, though, back to class. It was a fun lesson. I always like to see what kind of stereotypes people say. And one that I really liked, my favorite answer, one of my students, I said, okay, go up on the board, write things that, stereotypes are things that, you associate with America. One student wrote in big green letters, Chad. So I like that.
Oh.
Thought that was kind of funny.
Spread a little love.
Adorable.
Right? I was like, well, I mean, I am American, and I'm the only American so I see why you would associate me with that. So.
I mean, but that's how stereotypes work for a lot of people. It's based off of these tiny subsets that grow to just explain in millions of people most of the time. And so, I think you're a good representative of America. So if they think,
try.
If they think American or they think you, I think that's you've done your job there.
Right. Well, thank you, buddy.
You're just spreading the good word of Americans. You're like a American Jehovah Witness. I think they call that an ambassador.
or aren't the people from church, aren't they called missionaries?
Right. That's what I was looking for.
Because I feel like Jehovah's Witness, unfortunately, have a slightly negative connotation. Knocking on people's doors.
Oh, all right. I was like, they have no really less negative connotation than any other. But yeah, that is annoying.
Right.
Never happened to me though. Remember when we were in Austria at
I'll never forget
the main train station. There was those. Were they Jehovah's Witnesses?
Probably, I think
something along that line, where they would just hustle people down to spread that word of Jesus to just spread a little love. Hey, haben Sie Zeit? Haben Sie Zeit? Love.
Right.
And it's like...
It's funny you mentioned that. I've actually memorized the phrase, I don't have time in Czech, when people have come up and approached me. It's nemám čas, I don't have time.
Okay.
And it's become a useful phrase here and there. I was in Prague, and this guy tried to stop my buddy David and I said, nemám čas, don't have time.
That's probably a good time to drop this.
Mluvite anglicky. Yeah, but in Prague, most people do. So
that's a good point, especially if they're trying to scam you or something like that.
Exactly.
Then they'll be like, oh, yeah, of course. So anyway, You're like,
So,
oh.
Jared, I'm going to change gears a little bit here. I had a terrifying moment earlier today while I was setting up for the podcast. Well, not even while I was setting up, but I got hungry, so I figured, all right, I'm going to make myself a little sandwich. And I usually toast my bread, right? I buy the Brötchen, or like the bread rolls here, because they're just as good as they are in Germany. Some of our German listeners might not like hearing that, but I would say, they're baked fresh. They
it's
taste
just
good.
bread. How offended could they be?
Germans are proud of their bread, man. Trust me.
Even just a standard Brötchen, I've never found it to be anything. I mean, it's not that it's bad, but I've never found it to be anything particularly special.
That's true. Anyways, I went to go toast it, right?
Okay.
I pushed down on the toaster, and all the lights went out in my kitchen.
Whoa, what?
Yep. And then the bad thing is the lights that are... So I think the way the circuit board is set up is... So to the left of my apartment, all those lights are on one circuit. To the right of me, they're all on another circuit, right? So that means when my kitchen lights go out, my bathroom lights go out, the lights in my corridor go out. Also, it's connected to my Wi-Fi router. And the first time I blew a fuse, I tried using the switch on the main router, but there's actually another router out, or not router, but fuse box outside of my apartment. And you need a Phillips head screwdriver, which I do not own right now. I don't have a Phillips head screwdriver. So I thought, crap, it was almost 8 o'clock. And I was like, I do not want to call my mentor, who I'm renting this apartment from, to drive all the way here just to ask the neighbor downstairs. Well, she probably has a screwdriver at home, but unscrew it, do all these things. So I called her and I was like, I'm really sorry for bothering you, but half of my power is out. And the first thing I thought of when I saw that the lights were out on the router was, crap, how are we going to do the podcast? So
of course, that's
all
I was concerned about. But
exactly. But thankfully, I could just flip
one
of the switches on the fuse box and everything came back on.
Nice.
So it was like the weight of the world was off my shoulders after that happened.
So do you have to like sort of actively think about how many things you have on and what you have plugged in, and or is it just random?
Not usually. I mean, generally speaking, I only have the lights on for the general area I'm using in my apartment.
General area.
Exactly.
I met your mother reference.
But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I've had the only other time a fuse blew was I came home and I hit the main light in my corridor, and there was like a flash, and all my lights went out. I couldn't turn anything on. I had no power. But thankfully, my mentor was actually going to be stopping by in like 20 minutes to pick me up for choir. So she came in. We weren't sure, and so then after choir was done, we came back up, took a look at it, borrowed a screwdriver from my neighbor, and then got it all working. But when this happened today, I was like, oh no, it's 8 o'clock. She's probably at home comfortable.
Right.
This is going to be awful. But thankfully, knock on wood, it all worked. So we are here for all of our listeners today, recording our episode 62.
Next episode, Chad will be, the video will just be Chad all in the dark. He's like, this works if I only have my computer plugged in and my router, and I have to whisper into the microphone because I can't give it too much power.
Exactly.
Hello.
Anyway. So that was scary. But what's been enough about me? I've been talking way too much about myself. What's been going on with you, buddy?
I mean, really nothing. I was happy that you've had so much going on with your life. I've just been like, I mentioned that I had to cancel my piano lesson the other day. I felt really bad about that, so I gotta. So that made me feel bad. But other than that, there's not much. I just have to. Learn how to manage my time. That's all it is.
That's fair. It's tough.
Yeah.
You're a busy guy. You're doing great work for the Untranslatable podcast, and
right.
We really appreciate it.
Right. Thank you. Right. You said we. I was like, we? Who's we? But
me and the listeners. The royal we, if you will.
Speaking of which, 5-star reviews.
That's right.
Yeah, but no, I'm doing well. I'm just I'm happy to be here. And it's hard to I don't know. It's just all the news and stuff is just it's exhausting. Did you hear about definitely. the Trump reinstated the trans ban for the military?
And didn't the Supreme Court vote it and it passed?
Yeah.
Which I don't understand that. I don't understand, if I were in the military and I was ambushed, I would not care whether that person was a man, a trans man, a woman, a trans woman. As long as they can do the job, I don't think the gender really matters.
Everyone is still, put under the same training.
Right.
It's
exactly.
It's just like if someone wants to volunteer, let them volunteer.
Exactly. Yeah, if you're willing to put your life on the line for our country, to defend our freedom, everything else,
right?
Why not? Yeah. Why should it matter? Why should it matter if your genitals match up with the person who you truly are? I mean, I know a few people from East Lansing that are trans. And, I feel like if you are, when I was born, I've always, I don't know if it's whether it's a social construct or what it is, but I've always, known that, I'm a guy. It is what it is. But I think there are some people who are truly born and feel like they're in the wrong body. Right. And we have the science, we have the technology, where if you truly believe in your heart and in your mind and in your soul that you're in the wrong body, who cares? Let those people be happy. We're only alive once unless the Hindus or Buddhists are right and we do get reincarnated. As far as I know, we're only alive once. So let these people be who they want to be. And also, if you want to fight for the military, good for you. Who cares if you're trans or not?
I wonder if the ones that are like currently quote unquote out in the military, like what, do they just have to like pack up and go? Some of them might be like, oh, okay.
So what I've heard is the people who are already instated in the military will not be forced to leave. But
even
in the
how does that affect? Think about like how that affects the ones that are currently in there.
Oh, it's awful. It's a horrible situation.
That like they're not even wanted there. They just happen to get in, essentially.
Right. Yeah, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And it's the same as when they had it's not the same, but it's similar to when they had the don't ask, don't tell policy with any people in the military who were homosexuals. I think at the end of the day, I mean, I've never served in the military, and I have the utmost respect for all of our troops who served and who are going to serve. But the ones that I know and I've talked to have always told me they could care less whether or not they're platoon members, or I don't know what the correct terminology is, but they could care less if they're gay or straight, Right. And I think anyone who actually knows gay people realize that if I'm a man, right, they're just normal people. I think a lot of people have this fear like, oh, if he's a gay guy in the military, he's going to see me in the shower and like try to bang me. It's like no, that's not how that works. I feel like a lot of people who think those crazy things are completely clueless.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that think of those things are clueless, and also some of them are probably scared of what they would do if they were in that situation because they might like it.
That's true. Did you hear about the guy? There was a guy who was like one of those people that does like the gay conversion therapy. He had been doing it for over 20 years. He has now come out as gay and is looking for a partner. Yep.
No.
Yep. Shocking, right? Right.
Wait, he's working for who?
No, he's looking for a partner.
Oh, looking for a partner.
Like a male partner.
Jeez, good luck to that.
Right.
That's male suitor.
Right. That's the thing, though. I feel like the people who scream the loudest against something,
right,
I feel like a lot of times are actually that thing, and they're just so ashamed and afraid of themselves that they push it on other people or try to.
And then, and then I hate that. I kind of hate when, I'm conflicted because, like, I understand the joke, but like, I kind of hate those jokes about about Pence being gay, because at the end of the day, you're really just making fun of gay,
that's
closeted gay people. I don't really like that. Yeah, I don't know I don't know if that's turning me into Mr. quote unquote snowflake, as you say, or not. But that always bothers me.
Right.
Like, I get the joke. And I understand why people find it funny, but you're just making fun of the fact that, like, people, like, there are, a bunch of people that are, are so terrified to come out that they're just repressing it and hating the very thing they are.
Right. Yeah, and it's a shame.
And it's affecting
that's
people.
for sure. But Jared, that's enough negativity for a while.
God.
I think it's time we ought to
Spread a little love. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not the Jehovah's Witness kind.
right.
First of all, let's start this segment with a prayer. No, actually, first of all, let's start it with a follow-up to a previous shout-out. Previously, I shouted out Jamie Claus, who was kidnapped by this guy, and she was taken to a house about 60 miles away from where she lives, and her parents were murdered during this kidnapping. And Jamie escaped, and there were two rewards that were out. One from the FBI, and one from the company that employed her parents. The parent company is Hormel, which they make meats and not make. That's a
Hormel chili.
They produce and manufacture meat is probably the more appropriate way to to put it. And the sort of the smaller company that was owned by Hormel offered to put up the $25,000, and then a spokesperson for Hormel came out and said that they were going to honor that $25,000 and give it to Jamie Claus because she is obviously the only one affected here, and they said they hope that they can start she can use that to start sort of a fund for herself and sort of hold her over for a couple years until she can get her life back on track.
Right. Which I think is great. I can't even imagine what this poor girl has had to go through. Losing your parents, being kidnapped.
16.
Yeah, that's crazy. So shout out to you, Jamie. We really hope once again you'll be able to use that money and get back on your feet. And we truly wish you the best here at the Untranslatable podcast.
And the kidnapper, just to follow up, I said this last time, but he was found and he did plead guilty, so he's at least going to prison. So that's, I guess, some good news.
Right. I hope
and he pled guilty of a whole bunch of 2 counts of purposeful homicide and kidnapping and burglary. So he's got a lot of charges on the books. Do you have any love that you want to be spread?
Of course I do. I always try to bring the love to spread.
But
Jared.
first, a prayer.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to stop.
So the first shout out I have is there are 35,000. Have you heard about this? What's going on in Brussels?
Mm-mm.
So there are a record number of 35,000 school children and students gathered in Brussels to call for action against climate change. So this is one of the first times that students from university and schools of advanced learning have also joined this protest. So I think that's awesome that all of these kids are being active and they're trying to fight for our world. I think a lot of these young kids are going to have to deal with the effects that our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents have caused with, pollution and all these other things going on in the world. So I think it's great that they are coming together. Mm-hmm.
I'm not particularly scared for our lifetime. I think we'd probably, because let's think about it. If we eat all of our vegetables, we got another 80 years on us. And I'm
not so sure about that.
Tops. I'm saying tops.
Okay.
And I'm saying, you're not sure if we're going to live that long?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the world's going to be around that long.
Oh, within our lifetime?
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I was about to say, I'd be nervous for the next generation, but I'm not particularly nervous for my lifetime. You think I should be nervous for my lifetime?
I think you should be. I'm worried. But you know what? This isn't here to make Jared worried and make our listeners worried.
I'm curious why, though. I am kind of curious why.
Well, some of it's because my uncle who both of my uncles actually have told me that you will be affected in your lifetime. One of them was a biology teacher for over 20 years, so he knows the stuff.
Oh, great.
And the other one was just a smart guy. So
you just read a lot of books.
I mean, my other uncle told me, he says, and I don't know how true this is, I hope it never becomes true, but he said, in my lifetime, there might be a war for natural resources like water or food or something like that. So who knows? But that's too much doom and gloom. We're not here for doom and gloom. We're here to spread a little love.
I'd love to talk to your uncle.
Well, I'll have to see when he's around.
We can get him on our conspiracy theories podcast.
That's right, exactly. But my next shout out goes to PhD student Lawrence Crosby. Does this name ring a bell for you, Jared?
No.
So
I only see the depressing news.
Well, this is kind of depressing, but has a happy ending.
Missed this one. I just read the headlines.
So Lawrence Crosby was driving his car in Chicago, trying to go back to I don't know if it was Northwestern or which university it was, but he was trying to go to campus, and he noticed that there was something wrong with his car. He went outside to take a look at it. So he was trying to fix some loose part on his car. A woman saw him, and because he's black, of course, she called the police. The police showed up.
My God.
And he completely complied with the officers. Well, of course, as most of these stories go with the police and black people, they thought he was stealing the car, so they tackled him and beat him up pretty good. And thankfully, finally, he has won a court settlement for $1.25 million based on the way these police treated him and abused him. But, although it's great that he has gotten this settlement and hopefully can, try to move past this, it blows my mind how quick a lot of police officers are to judge things. And they said this is what blows my mind, Jared. Right here, officers determined he was the owner of the car at the scene, but detained him for disobeying police and resisting arrest. They say their use of force was justified as they thought it was a case of car theft. I'm sorry, but if you comply with the police, it shouldn't matter whether or not it's car theft or jaywalking. You shouldn't get a beat down for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. My thing is, sadly, this is just another day. But what happened to the cops? And what happened to that fucking woman that called the cops?
Right.
Is she just walking around?
Probably. I would imagine so,
isn't that some sort of accessory to assault or something?
In theory, yeah, I would think so.
And then the cops just keep going. It's like, well, it was a mistake, but they were still just following orders, and he was not participating, so we determined it was a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, your stupid student can keep using the N-word. That's fine. Sorry, he's not stupid, but your uneducated student.
Right. But yeah. Anyways, we're getting too negative, and I have one more story. And this one is, I think, a good feel-good story. So this is a 15-year-old boy named Eric Bean McKay. Loves peanut butter so much that when Lidl peanut butter went on sale for 78 cents, his mom stocked up with 72 jars.
Many fregista.
Quite a bit of peanut butter. And so he labeled all the jars with a number, and took him nearly a year to get through all of them. And then he tweeted to the grocery store chain about his peanut butter feat. So, dear Lidl, my name is Bean. I eat peanut butter and jelly English muffins every day. I numbered each jar, blah, blah, blah. And he said, my mom says it's time for you to have another peanut butter sale. The tweet got Lidl's attention, and they told Bean if he could get 72,000 retweets, representing the 72 jars of peanut butter, the company would give him a lifetime supply. In the meantime, Lidl sent 72 more jars to tide him over. Bean
He's going to have that on his Tinder profile in 10 years.
Right.
If you go out with me, you'll get free peanut butter whenever you want.
Hey, I like peanut butter. That might be a good selling point. Anyways, so he currently has 76,000 retweets to his initial tweet to Lidl. But here's where the story, though, Jared, gets even more into the feel-goods. So as most of our listeners probably know by now, the U.S. government has been in a shutdown. Well, he has been sharing his favorite peanut butter with not all of, but a lot of the furloughed workers that work for the federal government. So I think it's great that he is willing to be generous, obviously, with a...
Hold on. This just in. What's his name?
Bean is what he goes
Bean.
by.
Oh, okay, that's why I was confused. His nickname is Bean.
He's
been detained by the CIA and taken in for questioning about this. That seems to be like he's breaking some rules, and he is going to... Looks like he's... I don't know. It's just trending. It just showed up while you were talking about this. So, shout out to him. I hope he gets out of prison. This is a joke. I'm just joking.
You had me so confused. But yeah, so basically the teen's dad is a federal government worker who is currently furloughed during the shutdown, which inspired Bean to donate some of the jars to other furloughed workers. As a result, this is what's great. Any federal employee who is not being paid because of the government shutdown can pick up 3 free jars of peanut butter at the Lidl store in Virginia where they live. So I think that's great. I try to avoid bringing up more of these giving food to furloughed workers because I keep seeing this on all the news websites I go to and look at. But, man, we keep recording these episodes, and I keep wondering, when will the government shutdown end?
Yeah.
And it's still going on. It's absolutely insane. So there we go.
All this talk has just... I have one more shout out, by the way. All
perfect.
This talk has just really... my leg is shaking. My heart is beating fast. I want to slap someone in the face. What I need is a massage. I need to do some yoga. And I need to just sit and meditate.
Mm-hmm.
You know where I can do that at? I
Where's
can do
that?
at a place called Heel House, which was founded by a guy named Darian Hall with his partner. I don't know if it's I think business partner, Eliza Schenkel. And it's a wellness center in New York. That's a 1,100 square foot wellness center, which includes studios for group workshops and classes, private rooms for individual sessions, and large, tranquil outdoor deck where people can practice yoga and meditation. The wellness center also includes a cafe that serves medicinal teas, smoothies, and gives people a place to meet and enjoy each other's company. And so this was created by, so he's gotten attention in New York Times, Essence, Black Enterprise, and
nice.
Elle. And Black Enterprise and Essence are, black themed magazines. And I bring those ones up because he specifically made this. Darian is, I don't know who Eliza is. I think Eliza maybe is like his teammate, but Darian was the one that was interviewed in this. I guess I can click on it. It's right here. Let's see if I can see who this Eliza is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is, yeah. All right. His partner. She's also black, though, but I'm looking at her Instagram right now. I would follow her, but I'm not logged in on this computer. Anyway, so they opened this place together, and he's interviewed, and he said his reason why he thought of it is because he said he met his father for the first time last summer. I believe this is current, this story. I believe this came out, within the past couple of days. So I think last summer means, I guess it probably doesn't matter either way. So anyway, he met his father last summer, and he posted about it on his social media, and he was talking about, obviously it's intense meeting your father at the, I don't know exactly how old he was, but he's at least, in his 20s or early 30s, something like that. Like he's an adult. Mm-hmm. And so he's talking about that, and he said he had a lot of people, a lot of people reach out to him. His frat brothers, he's in a black fraternity, and that wanted to talk to him about stuff like that, and it got him thinking about the fact that, and it's highlighted in the black community, but I think this is a general sort of there's a general sort of stigma to talking about your mental health or addressing your mental health, and I think that it's and mental and physical health for that matter. And I think it's cool that this guy noticed this problem within his own community and decided to do something about it. And one of my friends sent this to me today, And I was saying, I was like, if this was in Philadelphia, I would definitely, I mentioned that I wanted to do yoga. I was like, this is the place I would go to.
Right.
And in the article, it says he's looking at other places like Atlanta and Philadelphia and other areas in New York. And I was like, of course, you just, in LA and stuff. It's like, yeah, you just find the black people, I guess, based off of what you're doing. But, so yeah, I thought that was cool. And I love that I like that he's truly
Spread a little love.
like actively doing that. I like that.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And even more to relax while I'm getting my massages and doing yoga is I'm going to drink a hearty beer. By the way, I was in the store looking to find out what beer I want, and I was kind of going back between two. And now that I think about it, they were pretty cheap. I should have just bought both of them because I'm going to do this again pretty soon. But really should have just bought both of them now that I think about it. Anyway, so I was looking at them, and they were both a kind of beer that I haven't had before. One was a wit beer, which is a white beer, a Belgian white beer, and the other was a hold on. The other was a Belgian triple, and
Nice.
and for those of you that don't know, Belgian triples tend to be rather strong, and the wit beer tends to be a lighter beer. And I was looking, and I was like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like the wits. Like, that's not usually my thing, but I'm looking for something new, and this triple is strong, as the kids say, AF. But I was like, you know what? I'm an adult. It's 5:11 in Philadelphia right now, so I'm clear.
Boom. That's right.
I'm clear. So now I can
Many fregista.
just enjoy this. Oh, geez, sorry. New setup here. Always a new setup. Always changing things around. And so this is from Maniunk Brewing Company. And have you heard of Maniunk before?
I have not. No, I have not.
I'd say it's a city outside of Philadelphia, maybe about 20, 30-minute drive from Philadelphia. And it's not Philadelphia. It's it's its own thing. And it tends to be it tends to get sort of like a young crowd, either college kids that live off campus, or sort of young professionals that say you got like your like what do you call it, like your entry level position somewhere. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And so they also have this brewing company, and so I got the. Oh, hold on. My hands are wet, but I need clean access to my soundboard. This is the Maniunk Brewing Company. Monk from the Yunk. I assume that's a pun that they're trying to do there because it's a Belgian style triple. So, I assume there's some I keep forgetting that this is on camera. Ah.
Right.
Ooh. Oh. Anyway. God, I hate myself. So as I mentioned, this is a strong beer. This is 9%. So, not for the faint of heart.
Not for the newbies to beer either, I would say.
But here it is being poured real quick. Oh,
Ooh, look at that pour.
Oh.
That's a pretty good pour right there.
Thank you.
Not bad.
So let me just read a little bit before I actually give it a taste. So on the little side of the can, it says, this strong golden color ale is brewed with Pilsner, malt, and noble hops, but it is the traditional Belgian strain of yeast that provides the complex aromas of fruit and spice. With a dry finish and a relatively light body, you will find our Belgian triple very drinkable for a beer this potent.
I like that. All right. I think based on.
Ooh.
All right. What are you sniffing there?
It's surprisingly fruity just from from the smell. I haven't taken a sip for those just listening. From the smell, it's surprisingly fruity. By the way, I say just listening because we are on YouTube.
That is
you
true.
You can see Chad's beautiful face in my face and beautiful Ghostbusters shirt.
And can I just add while you're sniffing that, we did not coordinate flannels.
No.
But we're flanneling it up today, that's for sure.
By the way, speaking of coordinating flannels, I didn't even plan for the black, white, and red of my Ghostbusters shirt to perfectly match the black, white, and red of my flannel. I just noticed that when you said that. That's what I like to call
effortless style, my man. Effortless.
Effortless style. I got this from the same thrift shop that I got those paintings from that I mentioned.
Is that like a jacket? Like it looks like it has a liner.
This is a sweet flannel because it is a awesome flannel, but it's a little bit thicker, so you can wear it as a jacket. So I'm not sharp. So it's a little bigger if you can't see it, obviously, because I'm sitting down, and because my muscles really hide the size. I haven't drank this beer yet.
Sorry,
I'm gonna take a sip of this this Manny Yunk, Monk of the Yunk. Sorry, Monk from the Yunk. What I was saying. Sorry, what I was saying was, it has like a juicy smell to it, but like you don't smell. I don't smell hops really. And I don't really smell alcohol.
You gotta give it that taste, my man. We gotta see if the smell test passes the taste test.
Ooh, this is an interesting one.
Okay,
I would not think this was a 9% beer. I'll tell you that much.
All right, so it is deceiving. Isn't that what they said?
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's true. That's the first thing I noticed because I know it's 9%. Obviously, it is very fruity. Mm-hmm. It is very fruity, and for those of you that can't see, it has kind of the color of a sort of a hazy IPA. I'd say, like it's lighter than you'd expect from a beer this strong. I would say,
and it looks hazier than like a golden ale. I would say, like it has a gold hue to it, but it also does look like it's got some haze to it.
It does. It does. Good eye there through the camera.
That's right.
But yeah.
Min Young Haze all in your brain.
So you can taste the, I think what helps, and this is going to sound like a little bit of
Mama hoo-hoo,
but bear with me. I think, so if you give it a slight second and taste it, you can taste that it's got a little bit of a bite to it.
Okay.
Sort of on the aftertaste. But I think what hides it so well is that it's so pungently fruitful. And it's not like a citrusy fruitful either. Like it almost smells like almost kind of like a grape or an apple juice a little bit.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it's not a grape. So it smells a little not citrusy. Excuse me, acidic, but not like a citrusy sort of acidic. Like a little less acidic than that. What was I saying before that? Jesus, I'm all over the place. This is good.
Okay. You gotta bring some of those when you come visit in Michigan this summer.
I mean, there's so many I would want to bring for you.
Bring them all.
All right, that's fair.
Leave your trunk empty. Bring them all. We'll have a great time.
I'll have one backpack in my passenger seat, and then just my entire back row folded down.
Perfect.
My gas mileage will be 10 miles to the gallon in my hyper efficient hatchback, just because it's just weighted down.
That's right. It'll be worth it.
So I'm glad I remembered what I was gonna say. What hides that strong alcohol number is that it's so pungent. So when you're taking that sip, you're also getting a strong smell of all that fruit. And I think that helps hide the alcohol while it's immediately going down your mouth. But then as you swallow it, maybe in the aftertaste you'll get reminded that there's alcohol in there. But that smell is so strong that when my face is in there, it sort of covers my taste buds.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Ooh, we're getting good at this, aren't we? Jesus.
It already looks tasty, and I'm gonna take your word on it that it is probably a fantastic brew.
I like it, yeah, and I think you'd like it too because. Usually if I'm particularly looking for a stronger beer, maybe I've just listened to our, Untranslatable podcast episode 62's shout out to the pod, and I'm like, oh god, like I don't know, I should just stop waxing poetic about this beer. It's great. We've been going for way too long for me to keep waxing poetic about this beer.
Well, good to know though. That's really good.
Yeah. Shout out to the Maniac Brewing Company.
Heck yeah, for sure. Well, Jared, do you happen to have the time by chance?
Of course I do.
Ooh. So, Jared, I gotta tell you, I actually did a little digging, and I found a Dutch untranslatable that I have not actually shared on the pod.
Stop the pod real quick. I believe before we started this episode, you mentioned that you only have one untranslatable.
Yeah, I have two.
Oh, you
I have
sly
two.
devil! You.
That's right. Don't worry, I have a Czech one. But the Czech one,
I wasn't going to be mad. I was just going to be shocked that this was the first episode in a long time that you've become Czechless.
No, I'm going to keep bringing the Czech as long as I can.
Are we going Dutch on the Czech?
That's right. But we're going to start with Dutch today.
All right.
And this is, I'm going to try to say it. Een ver van mijn bedshow. Probably got the last two words. Een ver van mijn bedshow.
Is it and for me?
Far from my bedshow.
What bed show?
Bed show.
I put on quite the bed show last night, if you know what I mean. I don't know what bed show is.
I would take it for face value.
All right, give me the literal again.
A far from my bed show. Een ver van mijn bed show.
Is it like
or
I
a
have
show
no, I have
far
no
from
idea.
your bed? There you go. How about that? A show far from your bed.
Like I can't remember. You can barely remember. Far away.
Nope.
Give it to me. This is too vague for my little brain.
It's when a Dutch person will find something uninteresting.
Okay.
So maybe like it's, if you're trying to watch
kind
something
of like my bed show that I put on last night.
Exactly. No, if you it's like if you're trying to like watch something and go to bed, right? Maybe you want to watch something interesting, right?
Right.
I would assume that's where it comes from, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's like something. It's not something I want to. This is probably not what it is. But my first thought would be like, it's not something I'd want to cuddle up in bed and watch. Like it's not going to keep me. Okay, my first one is Bulgarian, and I'll just give it to you. Here we go. Chesa seka de to ne me sadbi.
Okay. And means?
That literally means to scratch where it doesn't itch.
To scratch where it doesn't itch. So I'm assuming this is something like you're doing something that's unnecessary or something you shouldn't be doing.
Ooh. You're scratching it. You're scratching it. I want to give you sort of like a half ham horn. So
can you give me an example?
For example, I'm trying to think. If you were to watch a mafia movie, for example, Donnie Brasco. Have you heard of Donnie Brasco?
I have not.
Well,
nope.
The plot of the movie is it's a cop. Johnny Depp is the cop, actually, but he's undercover with the mafia, and he just goes in too deep, essentially.
Okay.
It's a great movie,
okay.
actually. I love that movie. But what some would say about him is that, he was undercover, but when he was working with the mafia for as long as he was and starting to make real friendships with these people, he started to scratch where it doesn't itch. And, So
getting involved in something or getting in too deep for something that you shouldn't be doing?
I'm going to give it to you. It's when you do something wrong and try to get away with it, but you can't hide the truth.
Ah, okay.
So that's essentially what it is. Yeah, I'd give that to you. You just said it differently.
Nice. All right. My second and last one for today's episode is...
No. Keep going. My bad.
Is Czech. And honestly, man, this one's pretty straightforward. But I'm going to say it anyways. Kdo si počka, ten se dočka. I like the way it sounds.
Yeah, it does have a little rhyme to it.
Uh-huh. And it means... He who waits lives to see the results.
Yeah, story of my life.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a saying that you gotta don't talk about it, be about it. Like you can't just sit around and talk about or wait for something to come your way. You have to actively go after what you want.
Well, I think not only that, but you also need to be patient.
Okay. That's fair.
If you're willing to wait for it, you'll see the results. But if you're too impatient and you're not willing to wait for it, how are you going to see the results?
I was a little quick on the trigger there, I must admit. My next one is Bulgarian. I can only do one more. We can go to the. I'll do one.
Sounds
more.
good. Yeah, sounds good.
Let me do this one. I'll come back to the Bulgarian one next episode. Let's do this. This one is Zulu.
Oh, nice.
And it's Nala Kungeko Kudo Liasa. And it literally means, even when the rooster is not present, day dawns.
Ooh, I like that one. I think what that one means is just, no matter what you may do or no matter what happens, things are like out of your control. Things are still going to happen.
Nope.
No?
Nope. I mean, that is true what you're saying, but that's not what
Right.
this means.
Okay. What was it again?
Even when the rooster is not present, day dawns.
Regardless whether or not you want it to happen, tomorrow is coming. I don't know. I have no idea.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Often what I'd say normies like us might tell a celebrity is that, sometimes you see celebrities, you remember, say you're a fan of someone and you remember when they were not famous and broke, if you like a comedian or something, and then they're famous,
Right.
and they turn into an asshole or something like that. And you want to remind them, it's like, hey, don't forget, even when the rooster is not present, day still dawns.
So, like, don't forget where you come from?
It kind of just means that don't, like a person thinks highly, like too much of themselves. They think they're important.
Okay.
They think they're important and deserve to exist more than someone else. And it's like, and it's
Gotcha.
essentially saying the life still goes on even if you're not around. You're not as important as you
Oh,
think.
so like the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yep, there you go.
I like that. Okay. That's good.
Yeah. Or they gave an English example. I don't really like it. That's why I didn't bother with it. But they said no man is an island. But yours is even better. That one, I think your example.
I've never heard that before. No, I've never heard that before. No man's an island.
I've heard it, but
Okay.
it's not. No one really says. I mean, what was the one you said again? I forgot.
The
already.
world doesn't revolve around
Right.
you.
People say that all the time.
My mom told me that a lot when I was a kid. That's for sure.
One of my favorite. Can I just give you one more quick untranslatable that just
absolutely.
came into my head?
Absolutely.
We always talk about. How. Or I always say at the beginning, something that your parents or grandparents said that makes no sense, but you know exactly what they mean. My mom used to always say to me, "Who do you think I am, Josephine Donut?"
Who is that?
I have no idea who that is, but I knew exactly what she meant every time she said it, and it was because of the context that she used it that it made sense. But I would say that for like the first 6,000 times she said it to me, then I just accepted it as an untranslatable.
Nice.
And it just essentially means like, how gullible do you think I am? So I'd say it's
Okay.
like you ask your
I like
mom, like,
that.
hey, can I go, sleep over at blah blah blah's house for 6 weeks or so? I don't know. That's I can't even think of what sort of stupid stuff I tried to get away with when I was a kid. But it's just like, if you try to, she's like, who do you think I am, Josephine Donut?
Okay. I like
that's
that.
Me. It's like I know exactly what you're trying to pulling over on me, and you're not fooling me.
Right. That's fair. That makes
This
sense.
is one that came into my head out of nowhere.
I like that. That's a good one.
A little bonus. Right
There we go. Nice. I'm gonna have to start using that if you try to pull anything that proves I'm gullible, Jared. I'm not Who do you think I am? I'm not Josephine Donut. I like that.
It's just, who do you think I am, Josephine Donut? You would never say.
Yeah.
I've never heard, who do you think I am? I'm not Josephine Donut. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Right. That's too
Who
long.
do you think I am, Josephine Donut?
Yeah, that's better.
I mean,
all right,
yes,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
Jared, I think it's time we address our main topic of the episode: independent language study versus taking language classes. So I just want to hear your thoughts before I add my 2 cents.
At first, when you brought this topic up to me, this topic was your idea. At first, when you brought it up, my first question to you was, do you mean teaching yourself language or being taught by, say, a one-on-one teacher sort of situation? And, we clarified that. You meant teaching yourself a language.
Right.
Now, that seems like a whole different ballgame to me because that seems like it takes so much more motivation. You have, and it
Absolutely.
takes self-dedication. You have to actually want to learn it.
And discipline.
Yes, discipline. That's what I'm looking for. And it also takes like a level of proactivity because, at least to me, I think that if you're going to self-teach yourself, then you're going to have to actively find outlets to be able to speak it. You can't. I think it's impossible to learn any sort of foreign language. I mean, not impossible. Let me take that back. Not impossible.
Very difficult.
For your average learner, it's very difficult to learn in a vacuum without actually speaking it. Impossible, not at all. It's very possible, but it's harder. It's much harder to learn without actually being exposed to it. So, for example, I've been telling you that I've been struggling to find a German partner, and I think if I were someone that were more serious. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see the light. Anyway, if I was more serious about actively trying to learn a language and caring about that. I mean, I care, but clearly, not that much, I guess.
Right.
I would have to I would have to actively be looking for that harder than I am. I think, at least. I think. Have you ever attempted or considered to self-teach?
In a way, I'm half doing that with Czech. Also, buddy, just so you know, just because I care about you, I have Googled. In Philadelphia, they have this thing called Conversation Exchange, which is language exchange in Philadelphia. So native language, English practicing language, Slovak, German, French, type of exchange, face-to-face conversation. So if you Google German speaking partner Philly, that was the second result I hit. Just a heads up for you. But I think actually, like, studying a language by yourself, it is very good to have some either native speaker or someone who has studied the language at least more than you have, where you can use them as a reference, whether it's on grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, what have you. And before I came to the Czech Republic, I did some independent study. It was more or less just basic phrases and things like this, and also trying to learn how to properly pronounce all the letters with the hot checks, which are like the hooks over them, the ch, the zh, the sh, and the r as well.
Now, not to downplay what you did, because I'm proud of you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
But would you be motivated to either continue Czech after you leave at some point, or like, for example, Spanish? You've said that you wish you were better at Spanish. Mm-hmm. Would you just pick that up without being in Spain or Mexico or wherever you are?
Sí, claro. ¿Por qué no?
But you're talking so hypothetical right now. I'm saying, would you actually do it though? Do you think you have it in you to that sort of dedication and motivation to sit down at your desk every day for at least 30 minutes to an hour and practice a language?
I'm gonna give you
especially if you're not living in that country.
I'm gonna give you my favorite German answer, and that's jein. Combination of ja and nein. Yes and
okay.
No. I say yes and no because I think for me there has to be some. I love learning languages, and it would be awesome to be a polyglot, but I guess I don't have a ton of time, so I like to play guitar when I can. I like to read.
Right.
So I think I could dedicate 10 to 15 minutes a day. I'm not sure if I could do a half an hour. And for me, there has to be...
15 is not bad, though.
Right. And for me, there has to be some
if you
type
actually
of...
sit down and do it for those 10 to 15.
Right. And it's very concentrated and focused. And for me, it would have to be, I'm going to be traveling there, I'm going to be living there, or I want to make friends who speak this language. That's why I think Spanish would be, in a way, a bit more feasible than other languages, because I do have friends who are Spanish speakers who I could practice with. A couple of them are actually Spanish teachers, so they would be great resources for me to try to have a conversation with.
Mm-hmm. And it's very applicable for us as Americans.
Oh, absolutely.
And just, in general in the world, it's a widely used language.
Right. And the other funny thing is, we've said this on the podcast before, I love the way music sounds in Spanish. So even on a musical level, to be able to understand what they're singing about is great. Although I've had some friends from Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and Colombia tell me that I don't want to actually know what they're saying when you listen to reggaeton music, because it's very
this is all sex,
graphic and dirty and sexual. Exactly. But hey, if you're trying to
have you seen the reggaeton dances, though?
Oh, I know, right?
They would be having sex if they didn't have clothes on.
Right. But hey, if you're trying to meet some pretty South American girls or Mexican girls, maybe some of that vocab might be useful. You never know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Fair.
to answer your question though, with Czech, I think with Czech, I would like to get to the point where I can maintain it and don't forget it all, because that's the thing I'm most worried about. I'm not really that concerned about becoming super conversational in Czech. I'm more worried about, at least after I leave. While I'm here, I want to be able to use it to survive and occasionally be able to, drop a couple like phrases when I'm like talking to Czech people.
Paráda.
But the thing is that and maybe some of this has come from I'm letting these other people influence me. I've had so many people here, and it's really a shame. I've had so many people here ask me, why are you learning Czech? It's not and these are coming from Czech people. They're saying, why are you learning it? It's not super useful. After you leave, you're never going to need to use it. And although, yes, those are all valid points that they're making, at the same time, I think it's been really fun and an exciting journey to try to challenge myself and learn Czech. But
My question to them, and maybe not to them directly, but just the first question that came to my mind as a response, because, I'm snarky, would be... like what is their reaction to that ignorant American that comes and takes no attempt to try to speak the language? Because I bet that they would be annoyed by that sort of just confidence to not even attempt to try.
I would say yes and no. I think I've had a lot of Czechs actually be incredibly surprised when I do speak the little Czech I can speak. So, and that surprise reaction makes me think maybe they wouldn't be super bothered by it or find it as very ignorant.
I'm just projecting.
But I'm not
bothered by it.
Right. But, for me, it was also really important to know the basics. Just how do you say hello? How do you say thank you? How do you say please? How do you order food? Right. Things like that. But I do have to also say that when I was studying Czech completely by myself, not having a Czech teacher, I meet once a week for an hour with two teachers at my school. One of them is the Czech language teacher at our school. It has definitely helped my Czech. I would say the thing it's helped me with the most, though, is just my confidence, because I have an opportunity to practice it with someone.
Yes. You've still been doing those every week?
Yeah, we did.
You do the English back and forth one?
Yep. So really it's more 50-50. It's half English, half Czech. And she really pushes me. Like, we'll do sentences where I have no idea how to say these sentences, and I try, and I struggle, and I fumble through them, and I fight through it.
Do you push her back? Do you do it back to her with English phrases?
The English we're covering is, so the language we're covering is very basic, and so she can do the English. She can do the basic English. But I've noticed with her confidence in English has grown significantly. She speaks it more with me in the office. She's become much more comfortable. The funny thing is, before we started this kind of tandem language learning journey, we would speak in German. Her German's really good, and we would speak in German.
Oh, do you miss that a little bit?
Not really, because we still do German.
Okay.
But we also do Czech, and I'll come in the office. She always likes to ask me questions in Czech right when I come in the morning. I'm still half awake. And she'll ask me questions in Czech.
Fire and hot.
And I'm like,
Are you a coffee drinker, a morning coffee drinker?
I'm not, no.
Okay.
I used to be, but not anymore. So my response usually is nevím, which is Czech for I don't know. Or nerozumím, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Mluvite anglicky.
Exactly. But, I think that the thing with independent learning, you make a great point, is that you need to have some type of outlet to practice it. Now, one thing that I think is really badass is there are some people who are very dedicated polyglots. They have YouTube channels of them speaking the language and people commenting on their pronunciation, their vocab, whatever.
We follow some of those on Instagram.
Yeah, yes, we do. And there's one guy that's really awesome, Tim Donor. He's great. Benny Lewis is another really famous polyglot. And there's a guy who, I believe he speaks Portuguese, either Portuguese or Spanish, and he's learning Czech. And his YouTube is Tady Gavin. Tady means here in Czech, like here's Gavin. And
shout out.
And I've had numerous students tell me after they found out I was trying to learn some Czech, they said, "Oh, check out Tady Gavin. Check out his channel. Check out his channel." And so he's actually kind of a celebrity here in the Czech Republic because he's an American who is teaching himself Czech. and he lives in the States.
And Czech people enjoy watching that?
I think so.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess it also helps them learn English, too.
Right. And at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't you enjoy it? You know, you want to see someone interested in your own culture. At the end of the day, we humans love to talk about ourselves and where we come from and everything
Welcome
like
to the
that.
Untranslatable podcast.
Exactly. So, yeah, but I think as you mentioned, sorry to cut you off. I think
no, you're good.
The important thing you mentioned was when you're doing independent study of a language, whether that means you meet with someone privately once a week, twice a week, however often, or you're just doing it by yourself, the beauty of today's society is go online and find somebody who you can consult with. And the other thing, too, that's important with a language, especially independent study, I think more so than taking a course, is you really want to try to have some goals with what you're trying to learn. Dedicate a time each day. Doesn't matter if it's the same time or a different time, but really try to dedicate a time every day to learn the language, learn new vocab. And the other tip I would give anybody, and this goes for students taking a language course or students who are studying a language independently, keep a vocabulary diary. What I mean by this is keep a small diary. Whenever you learn a new word, write it down. If you're a true beginner, I would write the translation in your native language. If you're not a true beginner, when I've done this with German before, I'll write a description of the word in German, right? And I learned this actually from a friend of mine who studied abroad with me in Austria. Sadly, you never met him because he was there the second semester. But he had this thick notebook, and it was filled with German words, and his vocab was really expansive. And so I think that's a great tip for anyone learning a language is keep a notebook with vocab.
That makes me happier that I proposed this Czech Word of the pod at the, when you first moved there, because it's sort of your live word diary.
That's true.
So a couple things I want to comment on what you said. So you mentioned, through, we mentioned Instagram or YouTube channels where people document their journey with learning a new language, and a lot of times native speakers, we've had it happen on our Instagram on a couple untranslatable videos I've posted and butchered pronunciations or literal translations or whatever I do. That was one thing I wrote down in my notes that would be a huge concern for me. And this is why even, when I started playing piano a couple years ago, I started for the first, say, 2 months, quote unquote, teaching myself. But I feel like I could notice that I was I clearly am teaching myself a lot of mistakes right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of form and strategy that you can learn on the internet. But it doesn't really apply if there's not someone in the early stages of you learning these things that's constantly pounding it into your head every time you make that mistake. There are some mistakes I used to make, like in the early days, that now when I start to do it, there's like a voice in my head that tells me, like, don't stare at your hands. Like, for example, I always stare at my hands when I play, and my teacher is trying to get me confident to play and not look. So now, even though I still do it, I'm in my head, I'm like, you should be staring at your hands right now.
Right.
And I think that, I guess having that social media aspect and having someone being able to tell you would fix that problem.
Right. But the only thing that I worry about with doing any type of social media, I think it's great to share your journey with others. I think it also empowers others who are a little apprehensive to try to learn a foreign language or are like, it's too difficult. Czech is a difficult language. Well, check out Toddy Gavin and maybe it will change your opinion, right? Maybe it will empower you to try to take it upon yourself and do it as well. But the thing I worry about with anything online, there are a lot of trolls out there lurking on the interwebs. And so you got to really develop a thick skin and not take it personally when people make fun of you or do whatever, And
that's why it's probably important to develop those relationships so you can get responses from people are not just trying to, be a dick or whatever.
Right. And I'm sure there's also numerous websites where you can find people and do some type of language partnership. Sadly, I didn't do my research about this before the episode, but I'm sure
I think another important thing of self-taught language learning is you have to know your learning style. Do you know your learning style? How you learn best?
That's a good question. I've never
My
really.
parent teacher claims that I learn best visually. And so so it always helps to have like a lot of things written down on my paper, and that I seem to get it when I watch other people do it and sort of recreate what they're doing.
That's
Some
a good
people
question.
get it by hearing, or maybe
Right.
their hearing is more acute, so they or by repetition or something. I don't know, and I'm just making shit up.
I would think I'm more of an auditory learner, meaning hearing. But it's interesting you mentioned that.
You're good at pronouncing things quickly.
I try.
Adopt. I mean, I'm not saying you're great, like you're just this, but I think you're good at understanding different pronunciations and hearing how people pronounce words.
Well, I would like to think I'm obviously a little biased, but I would like to think I have a decent ear, whether that be for language or for music. But it's interesting you mentioned that though, because I remember in high school taking tests and trying to visualize my notes. But see, then again, I was writing my notes, right? I think maybe if I would have read them aloud, I would maybe think back to what I said. So I'm not sure if I'm more of a visual or an auditory learner. But I mean, in terms of language, I think it helps me more definitely to hear it than to read it.
Right. So you mentioned this guy, what's his name? Toddy
Gavin.
Toddy Gavin. Am I naive as the American to how much self-taught language learning is happening? Because I feel like that's not a popular genre of videos here in the United States. Watching people
Probably
try to
not.
learn English.
Probably
I feel like
not.
it's a very niche audience here in the United States. Obviously, it exists, but
Right. I would say
it's not like a big thing.
I would say you're right. I would sadly think that one of the reasons why is just because a lot of United States citizens don't really language learning in the United States. I don't think is as big of a priority as in other places in the world. Just because we're very privileged that a lot of people speak English and learn English, which in a way kind of motivates me a little bit more to go past that stereotype of Americans can only speak English. When I can bust out, I love the expression I get from people when I bust out a couple Czech words. Or when they say something to me in Czech. So here's a funny little, sorry to go off on a tangent, but here's kind of a funny little story.
This whole episode is
That's
the
true.
podcast is tangent. It's not even an episode.
That is true. That is very good point, Jared. Good point. So I was at the printer at my school to print off some materials for one of my lessons. And one of the practical teachers, like he teaches kind of like shop class, I would say, in a way. I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but he teaches a class like this. And he's an older Czech gentleman and doesn't speak any English. And so he's printing that. And I asked him, what is it? What are you printing? He explained it to me all in Czech. I forget the words now, but what I could get the gist out of it, it was like an overview of the semester, kind of like a syllabus. But I don't think it was a syllabus because the students actually had to sign it. And he showed me the date and blah, blah, blah. And then in one of my previous Czech lessons, we talked about how to ask the question, what are your favorite hobbies? And the way you say that is, jaké jsou tvoje oblíbené koničky? What are your favorite hobbies?
Oh, Chad.
Parada.
Thank you. I've been saying that a lot to just random people. So that's why it's starting to roll off the tongue a little bit.
That's a great line for if you're out on the town or something and
Exactly.
you're trying to even if you're not, you don't have to have a full conversation, but just show that you can, hey, I can whip out a thing or two.
That's right. And when I told him, he answered me and I understood quite a bit of what he said. He said he likes to garden. The word for garden in Czech is zahrada. So he said he likes to garden.
Parada.
He
I just
had
think it rhymed.
right. He has what does he have in his garden? He has pumpkins. I forget the word for pumpkin now, but he has pumpkins. He has onions, a couple potatoes and tomatoes in his garden. And so we
Nice.
had this nice conversation. But dude, I cannot tell you, I felt like I was on cloud 9 after having just a simple conversation with him, because he's a super nice guy, super friendly, and I've always felt a little guilty because I couldn't really connect with him. But
Right.
just that one simple phrase opened up the gates.
And even though it was start off as a language barrier, it still kind of can come off, or even if it's just you internally, feel like you're coming off a little standoffish. You're kind of like a dick just for like not really addressing someone. But it's like I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say.
Right. I always feel bad.
Yeah.
For that exact reason. But anyways, my whole
Well,
tangent.
good for you for testing yourself
Right.
and having this great little conversation.
Right. But the reason why I also wanted to go on that tangent was that I think it's important, regardless of your skill level, if you're learning independently or in a class, you need to go test the waters. And, I learned some new words from that conversation, which is proof. The proof is in the pudding that if you put yourself out there and try, I think people are, one, going to be very happy and impressed with you that, his Czech's not very good, but he's trying. Making that effort, I think, is worth a lot more than a lot of people realize.
That's a similar message I got from when I mentioned that I went to that party last week, and I was talking to that guitar and bassist, and and we were talking about jamming and stuff, and he was challenging me to put myself out there to jam with people way better than me, because you have to start from somewhere, and it's better if you start. You'll be embarrassed, but you'll at least be soaking it in from people that are very experienced rather than
Exactly.
just a bunch of shitty people playing shittily.
Right.
Even though I guess that if you're actually learning, then that could have a benefit too. That's not to downplay that fully. But
Right. And I feel like you probably don't give yourself enough credit either. Just saying.
No, I don't. That's very true.
Right.
My piano teacher, as I've mentioned before, half of my piano lesson is like therapy to get me to have more faith in myself.
Right. And I think that translates well to independent language learning, though. I think a lot of people, even when I was doing an independent study of Spanish, I actually used Babbel, which is like an online, language website. I think it's great. It actually took my Spanish from novice low, which is like the basically
Just
true beginner, to novice high. So I jumped up 2 spaces from novice low over novice medium to novice high. I'm sure my Spanish isn't there now, but yeah.
That's what I was going to mention before too. Obviously this is almost goes without saying, but it's only becoming easier and easier to learn languages. You mentioned I call it Babbel, but what is it called?
Babbel.
Babbel. I always just call it Babbla for some reason because I never fully read it, I guess. But there's also like Duolingo, and I'm sure there are plenty of other apps and
right. I'd say those are the
there.
2 biggest ones are Duolingo and Babbel.
Right.
But yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and as we've mentioned, if you have one of those apps, I actually would study Spanish the same time almost every time. I would study it actually right. They say, I don't know how true this is, but they say that you learn best right before bed and right when you wake up. So I would study Spanish only 10 minutes a day, sometimes 20 if I really enjoyed the lessons. I would study it every night before bed. And then if I got up in the morning and had some time, I would also take 5, 10, 15 minutes in the morning to study. And
that's another, before you go on, that's another lesson I've learned from piano is consistency is more important than, saying you studied for 3 hours one day.
Exactly.
If you can consistently do it for only 10 minutes or only 15 minutes every day, just you have to it's the consistency that's way more important than just doing it once a week for 3 hours, for example.
Absolutely. You make complete leaps and bounds by doing it consistently over.
Because it just keeps it constantly in your head and you're constantly thinking about it.
Right. Exactly. And with languages, I think people don't realize that you need a lot of, input, meaning you need a lot of just hearing, seeing, reading the language on a daily basis. And also, eventually, when you can get to the level where you can produce the language, you also need to speak it. And the cool thing about Babbel is they have, and I think Duolingo has this as well, where you actually can do speaking exercises. So you can, I don't know how the software
it can
works.
Understand your...
Exactly.
Well, we've been amazed by Skype. It can do real-time...
subtitles.
Yeah, real-time subtitles on Skype during conversations. So I guess it's not shocking to think that you could do that on an app like that. That just made me think, though. Just imagine, like what that opens in business to be able to have live subtitling like that to try to like if you're doing business with other countries, that could change the game.
Oh, for sure.
You could have just a normal conversation like we're having and speak two completely different languages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be something in the future. But at the same time, I think sometimes it is helpful to have somebody who really speaks the language because you can't always depend 100% on the technology.
Well, especially as us that we've taken a lot of classes that involved German. And I've mentioned my friend Guardo, who would just write his whole thing in English, put it into Google Translate, then have our TA like fix the grammar mistakes for him.
Right.
Yeah, like there's something to, like you can't fully, there's something to context and all that stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So here's what I want to do real quick. Did you have something you want to say?
Nope, you're good. Go for it.
We've been talking all about independent learning, but this is about independent versus classroom learning. I want to get as a teacher of English and German, anything I'm missing?
Nope, you're good.
Okay.
you could tack on music on there, but I haven't done that in a long time, so you're good.
And previous music teacher. Well, I mean, clearly, as we've noticed through this conversation, half of the most of the principles are the same anyway.
Right.
I would like you to defend classroom learning and why you think it's superior. Or
I was just going to say I'm not sure. If,
I don't know.
Let me
why
give
I
some
said
advantages.
That.
I don't know if
why
it's
I said that. And disadvantages.
Right.
Please.
Right. Well,
from the perspective of the teacher that does it every day.
Before we do that, can I just run through real quick the advantages and disadvantages of independent study?
Sure. Yeah.
So
give us a little.
So advantages, recap. I think are. I mean, the clearest advantage is you get to learn a new language, right? I think another advantage with independent study is you can kind of set your own tempo or pace, right? If you have 5 minutes a day, great. If you have 30 minutes a day, great. If you have an hour a day, perfect, right?
And choose your own learning materials.
Exactly. So you have a lot of flexibility there. But I think some of the,
for example,
right? I think some of the downsides or the negatives though of independent language learning is you have to be motivated. So it's not for everyone. You have to be not only motivated, but exactly, you need the discipline. And then not only that, but tagging along with motivation and discipline, you also need to set goals and realistic goals. And if you're a new language learner, you may not be able to really know what those goals might be. But thankfully nowadays with the internet, I'm sure you could find some good goals, some good kind of benchmarks to try to shoot for. Exactly. Great minds think alike. Exactly. And they wear flannels. But yeah. And so I would say those are some of the pros and the cons of it. But I think learning a language independently can be an incredibly rewarding experience. And it's worth the time, the effort, and the struggles, I think, at the end of the day. Now let's move on to language courses.
Do you not think I would still argue before you move on, I would still argue as a con is that even though you have the input from if you do things through YouTube or Instagram or whatever it is, you're still, I think, hurting yourself as far as pronunciation goes. I feel like the people that you can always notice, and this is not really specific to individual learning, but you can always notice the language learners that were even whether they're good or not, at least in my opinion, not always, but a lot of times, whether they're good at the language or not, I feel like I can always notice the people that were exposed to it and learned it through exposure versus classroom learning, even the good speakers.
Yeah, I would agree, but I also think pronunciation has a lot to do with how good of a listener you are. And I think it doesn't matter if your exposure is through classroom learning, through watching movies, through listening to music, through living in the country.
That's fair.
If you're not a good listener, I don't think it really matters.
Sorry, maybe I'm projecting my style of learning on it because repetition is very useful for me, and so maybe my fear is just repeating the wrong thing over and over again.
But I think over time you could probably correct it. I think I could be wrong.
Is there something too, as me and my piano teacher always talk about, learning the mistakes, and then it's even harder to fix that, to make that correction?
Or is
that
yes
more of a problem with music?
I think yes and no. I mean, I think it's different when you're doing something more physically hands-on, like
with
music.
The muscle memory.
Exactly. However, language is also muscle memory. I mean, you have to learn how to produce the sounds properly, right?
Right.
But the other thing is, I think in terms of pronunciation, unless you're pronouncing it so horribly that people don't understand you, I mean, on a realistic level, we're always going to have an accent, right? Unless you learn at a very, very young age, or you're just that gifted of a language learner, or that good of a listener. So I don't know. I think it really depends on the person. I've met a couple people who have learned English through some really like interesting self-study ways, and they speak it very well.
Okay.
So I think it can be done, but a lot of it...
I take that back.
Well, but you're not wrong. I mean, it's a very valid point, but I think
it helps to have that constant reinforcement.
Right.
Like every time you, theoretically,
right.
Theoretically, every time you say it, there'll be someone to be like, it's said this way.
Right. Although there's some research that shows that doesn't... It works better to... In some cases, it works better not to stop them and say it's said this way, but to just kind of repeat it, but repeat it with the correct pronunciation. And ideally, over time, we hope that by hearing the correct pronunciation, it'll eventually catch on. Whether or not that really happens and how often that happens, it's a different story. But anyways, moving on to learning languages in classes. So I think there are a lot of advantages, but also some disadvantages as well. I think the first advantage is, and this is in an ideal world. We're talking about, the ideal classroom, the ideal situation. Here, in theory, we would hope you have a competent teacher who is setting realistic goals for your language learning progress, right? So if you're doing that by yourself, you have to do that by yourself. And you may not have the knowledge or the understanding of how we learn languages to do that. Whereas, someone
and like those stepping stones would be that you're trying to hit.
Exactly. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm going to toot it. And I'm going to say I feel fairly confident that I can step in a classroom with beginning, intermediate, or advanced level learners and be able to kind of, in my head, have an overview or like an arch of where these students should be going within the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever. Thank you, sir.
For you.
Thank you.
You don't want to do it, but I'll toot your horn for you.
Thank you. And so I think that's one of the big advantages of when you take a language class.
Finger slipped.
You're good. You're good. That's one of the big advantages. But the other downside of that is if the goals are unrealistic, or if you're not as disciplined or motivated or engaged as a student, those goals might not be realistic, or they might not be challenging enough for you. And the sad thing is, if you're in a language class, you're kind of stuck at the pace of the class.
You have to kind of go with the average speed.
Exactly.
Of the class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that can be a plus and a minus depending on where your language level is.
Even in general, when people are in, especially sort of the younger kids, in elementary school or middle school, people are you often hear that sort of cliche that the hyperactive kid or the kid that can't focus is usually the smartest kid in the class.
Right.
And they're just not challenged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say a lot of times that's very true. And so yeah. But the other thing is with private and independent language learning, in theory, the focus is all on you, which is good and bad. It puts a lot of pressure on yourself, but it also pushes you a lot more. With language classes, I've had English classes here in the Czech Republic where I'll get maybe maximum 1 or 2 sentences out of a student. And I don't like to be that teacher that is just constantly picking on students and constantly calling on them. But at the same time, my goal in every time I step in a language classroom is I want to hear every student speak.
Right, you're teaching all of them.
Exactly. Whether that's they report back to me in front of the entire class, or if I can... That's why I usually in my classes have them do a lot of group work. Because it's too time consuming to have every student tell me something, right?
And maybe that helps too, because they're not put on the spot. They're with their friends or classmates, so it's not as embarrassing to mess up.
But the straight up downside to that is a lot of students will then revert back to speaking their native language with their friends.
I've been there before in my early German learning stages, like in the beginner classes. I found myself doing that too. I get it.
And see, some of that has to do with, you mentioned being in beginner classes. Some of that has to just simply do with your language skills aren't up to par yet. So your teacher probably didn't give you the correct scaffolding or vocabulary you needed to complete the speaking activities, or they gave you too much time, you completed it, you got bored, and you revert back to English because your German's not good enough yet to just, kind of talk about whatever in German. And so I've tried very, very hard now to be incredibly mindful of how long I will have my students speak together doing group work. And if I notice everybody's speaking Czech, I immediately stop it. And we either they report back to me or do something like that. The other positive about taking a language class is if you're really dedicated, you have other students that you might be able to talk with. So you have immediate speaking partners inside and outside of class. Like you and I'm going to toot both of our horns here. I would say you and I both did a really good job after we studied abroad in Austria and spoke a lot of German outside of class.
I think so, yeah. That's And I feel like I would never do that, but I felt very fortunate to have, someone that I knew was just as happy to do it as I am. And I think that's hard to find like that. It is. Especially so, I also felt kind of lucky because you're an actual German teacher, or at least you're in the process of it at the time.
Right.
So you had those, and you were better than me at German, still are. So you kind of had those like teacher instincts, so we could have normal conversations, and you could still sort of correct me as we go along, as I always say.
Like one thing I'll never forget is I had, I'm going to give 3 very late shout outs to students that studied abroad with me in Germany when I went as
Austria?
a German teacher. No. I went as a German teacher with Michigan State. I had 3 students.
Oh, and you're teaching study abroad students German.
Exactly.
That they didn't have a German.
In Germany.
You couldn't find a German that wanted to teach German in Germany?
Well, we had a German teacher from Germany, but we also had a professor from MSU, and I went as a graduate assistant. It was a great position. We should actually do an episode about that at some point. But anyways, the thing about it was I had 3 students, Ryan, Elliot, and Alex, and all 3 of them had told me, we are committed to speaking German. We want to speak German the whole time we're there. And I have to say, they did a really good job. They only spoke English a couple times, and it was usually because other students weren't as dedicated as them. With me, they always spoke German. With my boss, they always spoke German, and they really put a lot of effort forward to doing that. And then they also would do that when they came back to the States. And whenever they talked to me, we always spoke German. And so I think
maybe we should get back into that habit, by the way, you and I.
We should. We probably should. You're right.
The Untranslatable podcast is going Deutsch.
That's right.
That's not true.
That's
not true.
That's right.
That's not true.
Subscribe. We will at our private
all of our English speakers subscribe.
Right. Get a big boom of listeners from Germany and Austria and Switzerland.
I guess I wouldn't hate that.
Right. But anyways, so I think that's the cool thing is if you're really passionate about it, and I think it's safe to say we're kind of German nerds, or at least we were. And you have someone to share that nerdiness with. But on the other hand, I think you could find those people. It would just be a little bit further out of your what am I trying to say, Jared?
Immediate circle.
Exactly.
You have to actively search for people rather than just have them sort of handed to you through a classroom.
Right. And the other thing too with the classroom is you have, in theory, you should have that expert, that teacher in there that's able to correct you, make you feel more confident. One of my goals here when I came to the Czech Republic was I really wanted to get all of my students to feel comfortable and confident in their English abilities. Whether or not they were great, average, or terrible, I wanted them to feel comfortable and confident enough to speak not only with me, but also with their classmates in English.
Yeah, that's a good goal. Yeah, it's like I'm not here to make you perfectly fluent in
exactly.
In 4 months or whatever it is, but I at least want to like the goal is not for me to make you fluent, but if I can make you comfortable enough to try to use this more often, then your job has been done, I guess.
Right. And I also think another really big advantage of language courses or classes is there's a lot of opportunity for fun ways to learn the language. I think when you do independent study, at least when I think of my German classes versus me independently studying Spanish or Czech, to me, it seems more serious. When I was studying Spanish and Czech, I enjoy it, and so that's why it's fun. But my German classes, we would play games that were fun. We would have interesting discussions, right? And so there's a whole different environment that you're encapsulated in when you are in a class, right? I try to play games with my students. I try to bring humor into my lessons, and it's hard to do that when you study by yourself.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's hard to play games by yourself.
Right.
Is there a German solitaire that could help with language learning?
You never know. You might have just come up with
Help
$1
with your
billion
numbers.
idea right there, Jared. But yeah, so yeah, and I think the other thing, one of the disadvantages though, is I think people put too much emphasis on improving their language skills via a language class. I think people think, I'm going to take German in high school for 4 years and become fluent. I took it in 4 years. I feel fairly confident to say I was fluent, or at least could really hold a good, solid conversation after 3 years of German in high school. But it's not because of...
You're an anomaly, by the way.
Well, sure, but it's not because of the 3 years in high school. And it's no disrespect to my German teacher. I had an amazing German teacher. Shout out to Frau Z. She was fantastic.
No, it's not disrespect to her, but as I meant, you're an anomaly.
Well,
you actually care to learn it.
Exactly. And I did a lot outside of school.
Exactly.
And that's where I think the majority of the learning happens. I think language classes are great. If you think of your this is maybe a crazy example, but if you think of yourself as a language learner as like building a house, right? Okay. I think the language classes can put a solid foundation down for your house, right?
Yes.
But for you to be able to build up those walls and fill in those rooms with beautiful IKEA furniture, you need to do a lot outside of class.
You need to build upon that foundation.
Exactly. You need to watch movies. You need to listen to music. You need to try to speak it with people, whether they're native. To be honest, man, I've heard so many people here in the Czech Republic rave about the fact that I'm a native speaker. But I think what's more important is to have a competent speaker. And that doesn't mean native. My colleagues at school speak really good English. And to be honest...
I guess I was going to ask, how do you feel about non-native teachers of other languages? But I guess that's you with German, so you're fine with it.
I think if their language skills are good, I think it's no problem.
Right.
I think it's safe to say you've
people
learned...
people want that native. Like, they feel like they're getting a higher level.
Sure.
Am I wrong? I feel like I'm 100% right.
No, you're 100%.
That they feel like they're
you're
getting,
150% right.
Yeah, because you and David were talking about how you guys are almost kind of celebrities there, and they showcase you off at other schools.
Yep.
Look at this American we got.
Right. It's like the having that shiny, fresh coat of paint on a new car. Right, or it's that extra
more
little
construction
something.
Style metaphors we're working with here.
Exactly, because the thing is, like, I know a lot of native speaker teachers who are here, and I'm sure they're fantastic teachers, but because they haven't been trained and they may have not learned a foreign language, they're just not conscious enough about their native language, which translates into, I think some non-native speakers might be better teachers of other things. Of grammar, of explaining why, like I had here, Jared, I'm going to put you on the spot. Why do we use farther versus further?
That is one I often struggle with. Every time I use one of them, I'm always like, which one? For example, and I want to know the answer to this, but for example, with lie and lay, whenever I always feel kind of weird saying lie, like I lied down, but that's how you're supposed to say it.
That's the correct way to say it, correct.
Nobody says it properly. Everyone says lay down when you're talking about getting in bed, which is not the proper way to do it. So anyway, further and farther, please, because I would love to know.
First, I want to address the lay lie thing first.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting into my teacher nerdiness. Is about to kind of, it's coming out. It's bubbling and it's coming out. But so we
I don't realize what I was activating when I asked you that question.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Disclaimer: whenever you talk about things like this, it's bound to happen. But the difference is we have what we call in second language acquisition prescriptive rules and descriptive. And prescriptive means the thing you should say. Right. It's also kind of like who and whom. I don't know any American that I would talk to in a regular conversation say whom, right?
There are times when I feel like I'm supposed to be using whom, but I don't because I'm like, oh god, I'd sound like such a douche.
Right, exactly. And then you have descriptive, which is what you actually say. So who or lay instead of lie, right? So that's what that dilemma is. And a lot of language learners obviously are taught the prescriptive rules. They're taught to say lie. They're taught to say whom.
But that's how language transforms over time. Theoretically, give it another 100 years of that, and it's just like that's lay is going to be the only word we use to describe that.
True, very true.
I guess. Maybe.
But anyways,
No?
further and farther. So you prove. Well, can you explain it at all? Like if you were teaching an English class and your student asked you, when should I use further versus farther, or what's the difference? Can you think of an answer?
Well, I'm going to assume that it has something to do with whether you're talking about an action or explain it to me. I'm just butchering this now.
So, that was my point.
Okay.
I wanted you to butcher it. I wanted you to butcher it because most native speakers can't explain things like this because we just know them. We intuitively know them. We know when to use further versus farther.
But I think I noticed that I don't. Like I noticed I was like, I'm not sure which one I'm supposed to use even when I use them.
Well, they can be used somewhat interchangeably. So that's why it's a tricky example, and that's why I wanted to give you this one. Plus, my colleague gave me this example 2 days ago, and at first it caught me off guard. But I thought about when I use it, and I think the trick is you have to really think about when do I say farther versus further. And the difference is farther is used for physical distances, right? Like he traveled farther than I did, right? Or go, you need to go a little bit farther down the road. Now, you could say further down the road.
A conversation?
Right. And now further is more for metaphysical, like not physical distances, but more abstract concepts, right? Like, I need to think a little bit more, I need to think, well, I guess I would never say that, but I need to think,
But you
more
could.
further.
It wouldn't sound weird. That doesn't sound weird.
Right.
I need to look further into this.
Exact. Thank you. That's a way better example, right? And so that's in terms of, it's a different type of distance, right? You're diving deeper into a topic, but you're not going, you're not driving more miles down the road.
I think that might actually benefit the independent learning because I feel like you have more of an ability to, granted, you could just do this on your free time, even if you were in a classroom, but it would be the independent learning side of it to actually, because I feel like it might be hard in class to call out every sort of subtle mistake like that.
Oh, you can't. And you wouldn't want to because
you're just wasting time.
Well, right. And over time, students will overcome a lot of those mistakes.
Right.
It's just a natural process of language learning.
The independent learner, because if you're actually curious about why it is you use whichever it is you use, like with accept or accept with an A or E or whatever, you actually have the time and ability to research it if you feel like it.
Right. Granted, if you are aware enough to know the to notice there is a difference. Right. I think that's the one advantage though with a language class is your teacher should be aware and point out these differences. Right?
Yeah.
So,
but if you're focusing on some other topic, there's not time to stop the class for every sort of nuance like that, is there?
Not really, but you have to pick your battles. If it's worth explaining, then I would say take the time,
Yeah, that's fair.
Or just
if you hear it enough, if it's like you guys keep doing this, so maybe I should take some time to address this.
Well, one thing I hear a lot with any English students is the third person S. So he has. A lot of people say he do, he have, he walk, and we need has, does, walks, right? But this is also
more reasons why English is way more difficult than other languages to learn.
Well, that's a whole nother.
That's pretty consistent in other languages.
But if you look at other languages with verb conjugations, it's much worse. German, it's worse. Czech, it's worse.
Yeah, you're right. Let's not get into it.
Right. So exactly. But anyways, see, that's the great thing about language courses is your teachers, if they're aware or if you bring it to their attention, they can talk about these things with you. Now, if you're doing things by yourself, you need to reach out to someone. So in a language class, you have a closer proximity of a teacher, a classmate you can ask whatever. I think at the end of the day, unless you're really good with the internet and you're an open, outgoing person, language classes will offer you more speaking partners, right? And as I mentioned, it's just a different environment than learning by yourself. It can be more fun and more lighthearted. It doesn't have to be, but I think it can be depending on your teacher.
Right.
So yeah, do you have anything else to add?
More variety of activities you can do with more people.
Right.
No, I think you did a great job. That was great. I asked a question and you answered it thoroughly and beautifully. That's what I was looking for.
Well, I appreciate it. This has been a fun episode. We may even have to revisit this one not in the near future, but in the future and do a 2.0, especially after I do some more language studying.
I mentioned we were overdue for a teaching specific topic. I didn't realize how overdue we were.
Right? I guess so, huh? I guess so. Well, Jared, I think it's time to loosen up a little bit. And
yes,
that brings us to our song of the pod. Have you ever heard of this guy before, Jared? Jose Feliciano?
No, but I'm obviously very familiar with the song.
And what is the song, Jared?
It's Light My Fire. Who is it originally by? It's some 60s band or something like that. Well, there you go. Right. Yeah, so what do you know? I assume you know Jose Feliciano.
Yes. So I first came into contact with him in high school. We did a lesson on different interpretations of the Star Spangled Banner. And I actually, of course, gave a presentation on Jimi Hendrix's Woodstock rendition.
That's a hard one to actually give a presentation on. That's a pretty intense...
It was actually really easy, I think, because it was so intense. There was a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's so, like, the symbolism is very clear in your face.
Right. And the funny thing
I
is...
guess that's true.
My history... Or no, this is my AP government teacher. He knew I was a guitarist and loved Jimi Hendrix. He actually let me bring my guitar in, and I played my own rendition of the Star Spangled Banner.
Did you do it like Jimi Hendrix, or was it just like a...
Not quite.
Okay.
I did it different because...
Did it take 15 minutes?
Right. No, mine was probably 3 or 4 minutes. Was nothing like Jimi Hendrix's. That's on another level. But anyway, so Jose Feliciano actually did a Star Spangled Banner rendition at Comerica Park. For our listeners out there who don't know, that's where the Detroit Tigers play.
Oh,
so
cool.
the Michigan baseball team, Major League Baseball team. And it's a really cool rendition. It has kind of a Latin vibe and feel to it. And he's an amazing guitar player, fantastic musician. He was born in Puerto Rico.
Kind of an old guy? He's been around for a while?
He's been around for forever. And he's also blind and is a fantastic player. But I picked Light My Fire by him because it's a great song. It's a great rendition of it. It has a really cool feel to it. I also really like the way he sings it. It's a lot different than the way the Doors sing it. But enough
and you
about my
light
opinion.
That fire to be independent. Light that fire underneath your ass to be an independent language learner.
Exactly. But what are your thoughts on it, Jared?
I like it. Something in me. Whenever there's some sort of cover or something that happens, we've talked about with when I went to the chamber concert or other songs we've talked about. Sometimes I struggle with covers because all I think about is the original version of it. But not to downplay Jose because I enjoyed this. I enjoyed his cover of it. It's not that it was bad, and it made me want to look more into this guy. He has a I bet you he's got a lot. I mean, I know he does. I'm sure you've listened to more of his stuff, but I can imagine myself liking his stuff. I like his style. His style reminds me of, I don't know, but there was a period in my life where I listened to more music and I listened to more like sort of classical rock stuff, like in college and a little bit post college and stuff like that. And I can imagine myself listening to this.
Right.
It fitting into that very nicely.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean the guitar playing of his is so great. The different little ornamentations he has on it. And I agree with you with covers. It can be hit or miss. And when I look for covers, I really try to find a cover that's going to say something different than the original. Because it's like, what's the point? If you're just going to play it exactly like they, some people, more musical purists would probably argue, oh, you have to play it the way they played it. But I mean, the cool thing about music...
But that's more of a classical thing.
Exactly.
That's not a modern day
Exactly.
thing.
And I think the cool thing about music is the way to interpret and play it in a different way. Give it a fresh feel.
I think when it comes to modern music, the thing is more, you don't want to no one wants a cover that just sounds the same because it's never gonna. It's even if it's quote unquote better, it's never as good as the original.
Right.
Because the original was also written by that person, and they had a specific vision in mind for that song. So even if it might be musically better, if you look at it scientifically, it's still not better most times because that's not how music is not purely just scientific like that. Unlike classical music, which I think has way more of that scientific nature to it.
Well, I think with classical music, you're trying to send the message that the composer tried to write, right? Whereas I think with covers, because covers generally aren't via classical, it's not classical music, it's rock or it's pop or it's jazz or whatever. I think these different genres of music lend themselves more to improvisation, to changing the music. Whereas classical music was it was written in a certain way, you're supposed to play it in a certain way, right? Whereas you have other types of music like rock where you can play it all sorts of different ways. And yeah.
I bet you Michael Zubstrom would disagree with you. Remember I mentioned that he had some pieces that were sort of remakes of songs? Mm-hmm. I would love to hear his opinion on that because I bet you he'd disagree with you.
We'll have to ask him. But right. But what I'm trying to say is if it's a piece written by Beethoven, in theory, you should be trying to emulate what you interpret Beethoven's message, right? Now, if you write something that's inspired by something else, I think that's a whole different ballgame. But let's leave it because we can talk about it more. Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
But let's leave it. We can talk more about it with Zubstrom, which I think will be a very interesting episode. I'm really looking forward to that. Well, Jared, as you mentioned...
Teaser right there that was just dropped.
Right. So I do want to mention my Czech word of the pod today. And this is a useful phrase for our independent language learners or learners in class. And it is učím se, which means I am learning or I learn myself. It's a reflexive, like in German, you have reflexives. You also have those in Czech. For me, since I'm learning Czech, I think I have the ending right. I may have the ending wrong. So if I do, to all of our Czech listeners out there, I apologize. To all you other listeners, you don't know the difference, so it doesn't really matter. So here it is, učím se česky. I'm learning Czech. Učím se česky.
Maybe we need to replace that
Mluvite anglicky.
With this one.
Right.
This one might be getting a little old.
Or mluvím trochu česky. Mluvím trochu česky means I speak a little Czech.
Okay.
So yeah. All right, Jared. Well, now it's time to give you a joke. And I wanted to give you a German one today since we've done, I think it's safe to say we've done some independent study of German on our own, but also been fortunate to take a lot of German classes. So, Jared, to a German, what comes between fear and sex?
Ooh, I don't know. What is it?
5.
That's good.
Right?
For those of you that don't understand that joke, between fear and sex, in English we hear, that's a little sneaky code switching either there. Fear and sex is fear and sex, but in German, fear and sex is 4 and 6, and in between that is 5, which is 5.
Exactly. So I figured you'd enjoy that one. It's not an original, but it's a very good joke.
It's kind of like why was 7 afraid of, or why was 8 afraid of 7 or something. Oh yeah, why was 9 afraid? Why was 6 afraid of 7? There we go.
7, 8, 9.
Thank you.
That's right.
Go.
Speaking of which, here, I'll give you one more joke.
Okay.
This one's a good one in English and Spanish. So if I have to explain it, I will happily explain it. But it goes, ¿Cómo se dice zapato en inglés? Which means how do you say shoe? You got it. How do you in English? You got it. So how do you say shoe in Spanish? ¿Cómo se dice zapato en inglés?
In English.
A shoe. And then they say salud.
Yeah, I get it.
Right?
Salud is bless you.
Because it sounds like you're sneezing. A shoe.
Yeah.
A shoe. Yeah, so kind of funny.
No, I got it.
I know you did, but I wanted to explain it for our listeners out there, just in case they didn't get it. We can't assume everybody learns Spanish, Jared. We can't assume it all.
I was starting to get a little offended. I was like, no, I got it.
Right? I knew you got it. You were not the one I was worried about. That's for sure.
Sorry, I forgot we have it's not just you and I sometimes.
That's true. But it usually feels like it's that way, which is kind of nice. We hope all of
that's
our
what
listeners
we
get
want.
the very bro-y, intimate vibe of the Untranslatable podcast. Well, moving on, I have a good quote today about language learning. And this is from Roger Bacon, who was like I believe a philosopher, also a friar. So this guy, goes way back.
Wow.
And he says, knowledge of languages is the doorway to wisdom.
We've had a quote of the pod long ago that was similar to that. Maybe even said by Benjamin Franklin, if my memory serves me. But yeah. It was some. I think I don't remember if it was Benjamin Franklin, but yeah, I mean I agree with that. And what the quote said before that was like it's not even just it goes to, it's so much more than just learning the words and grammar. You're learning a culture through their language, or a aspect of their culture. You're not
right.
I'm not going to claim that you understand a culture fully just because you can speak their language. That's not how it works. But you're learning an aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can better understand people, not just literally, but figuratively as well.
Right. And I also think you build a deeper understanding of yourself as well.
Yeah.
Through learning a language. But yeah. So I think that's a good quote to wrap up our episode today. And so we really thank all of you out there listening. We hope this was a helpful episode for you to weigh some pros and cons of independent language learning with or without a private teacher versus taking language classes. I think the important takeaway of this episode, though, is regardless which you choose, kudos to you for taking that first step to trying to learn another language. You've already gone farther or further than most, see what I did there? That most people have and will in their lives. So really a big shout out to all of you out there trying to learn a new language for whatever reason you have. I hope that you will have
Talk
a great...
that calf out of that heifer.
You're
The
good.
born. That's what I meant to play.
You're good. We hope
I need to
that...
get my color coding right.
Right. We hope that you can learn a little bit while listening to our podcast, and we hope that this episode was helpful in terms of some tips and tricks, or at least maybe not tips and tricks, but some pros and cons of the different ways you can learn language. If you are looking for tips, let us know, and we are happy to give you some of those. You can reach out to us via Twitter, Untranslatable1. Check us out on Instagram, Untranslatable Podcast. Or if you want a more detailed answer, you can shoot us an email at untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. And I would be happy to give any of you some tips on what to do if you're studying the language yourself. I think we have touched on some of those. Find a language partner somewhere. Try to find someone as well to kind of help you and you can consult with when you have questions. In terms of taking a language class, you're lucky where basically just be there physically, mentally, emotionally, and I think hopefully you'll make some steps in the right direction. So we really appreciate your support. Check out our various social media channels. Give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher. We would really appreciate it. We thank you all so much, and we are looking forward to the next episode. So we hope you have a wonderful day, evening, or morning, whatever time you are listening to our episode. So once again, thank you, and here at the Untranslatable Podcast, all we have to say is Děkujeme.